Hello, everybody. This is Sam Carchidi from Philly Hockey Now, and welcome to our Broad Street Bullcast. We have a very special guest today, the great Lou Nolan, who has been the Flyers' iconic public address announcer for over 50 years. Welcome aboard, Lou, and thank you for being here today.
Well, you're very welcome, Sam, and thanks for those kind words. It's an interesting description. Too much.
You're very modest, too modest. But before we get into the Flyers, and of course they're off to a very nice 4-2 start, unexpected start, I would say, especially going on the road and winning 2 of 3 against some really tough teams. But let's talk Phillies baseball a little bit, because we had the intersection of the Flyers and the Phillies yesterday at the Wells Fargo Center, and I think maybe 20, 30 years from now, everybody will still remember where they were when Bryce Harper hit the home run. It's one of the most famous home runs in Phillies history. Of course, it put the Phillies in the World Series. They beat the San Diego Padres, and way back in 1950 was probably the last time the Phillies had such an iconic home run. Dick Sisler hit one to put them in the World Series. They beat the Dodgers, and that put them in the World Series. But it's funny, I was actually in what amounts to a closet when Harper hit his home run. I was doing a spot on the NHL Network on Sunday. It was just a 5 or 6 minute spot on the NHL Network, and I couldn't go outside where the fans were, because the fans were watching the Phillies game, at the Wells Fargo Center on the big scoreboard. So I had to go to a place where it was quiet. So I found a quiet spot in Joe Seville's office. He's the Flyers public relations director. And I was down in the bowels, and you know it well, Lou, better than me, down in the bowels of the Wells Fargo Center, and in this little closet adjacent to Joe's office. And it was quiet down there, but you could even hear the roars from down there. And I looked on my phone, and the play-by-play, and it just said Bryce Harper homers. And but it was an incredible moment. And where were you, Lou, when Harper hit his home run? And of course, it was shown on the big screen. I don't know if you were out there preparing to start the game, if you were somewhere else. Where were you actually when that big home run was hit?
First of all, Sam, I know that closet, and it is a good place to go if somebody had not listened to a momentous home run. I was in the press room and sitting with the NHL off-ice officials and preparing for the game, working on my script and watching the game at the same time. And here comes Harper, and he gets that pitch, and boom, outside pitch, and he goes with the pitch. And like, it's just for a second, there's a and then all of a sudden it erupts, and the press room erupted with a tremendous cheer, one I've never really heard down there. Any cheers from the press are sort of verboten, I guess, in press row. And it never happens. This was for our Phillies, which has nothing to do with hockey, other than be our sister from across the street. But just fabulous, and so much noise, like boom, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be part of everything with the Phillies, and boy, I certainly hope that they have the same luck moving forward against the Astros.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough uphill climb, but the Phillies have been underdogs of basically every series so far. So, they had the momentum. It's two of the hottest teams, two teams that combined, I guess, are 16-2 in the playoffs. The Astros are 7-0. The Phillies are 9-2, and that's a good lead into the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers are 4-2, and what's your impression so far on this Flyers team? I don't think many people thought they'd be 4-2 right now, even after a flat performance on Sunday against San Jose. I would think 4-2, you'd be very happy with that start. What are your impressions of the team so far, Lou?
Well, Sam, I think that they have a bit more speed than they had last year, a bit more idea of where they're really headed. And in the game the other night, not a whole lot happened. Back to back, both teams, and none didn't matter. I mean, they went hard at one another for sure. But this is a very, very nice start for this club. I don't think the coach will ever be satisfied. That seems to be the way he is. I don't really know him, but he was always with the opposition when he came in here. But I'm sure I'll get a chance to sit with him and have a chat. But it's just these guys work hard, and by the end of the game, they were going as hard as they were at the beginning of the game. It just did not amount to anything. Once that first goal was called off for the offside on the coach's challenge, it just became a back and forth until San Jose cashed in on a couple of markers.
Yeah, for those who were tied up watching the Phillies game and you didn't really get to see much of the Flyers game. The Flyers and the Sharks were 0-0. The Flyers scored a goal. The Flyers had a power play, but there was a mix-up, and the Sharks went on an odd man rush. And Kevin Hayes, to his credit, went back and did some good back checking, took the puck away, prevented a 2-on-1 shot, and then came back the other way and made a terrific play to Scott Lawton, and Lawton made a great pass to Joel Farabee. It was a classic tic-tac-toe passing play, and Farabee knocked it in at the goal line, and the Flyers thought they had a 1-0 lead, and to San Jose's credit, now they challenged the call for offside, and you look at the replay, and Scott Lawton was offside. It really wasn't his fault. Kevin Hayes did kind of a stutter step as he crossed the blue line, and because of that, Lawton went in ahead of time, and he clearly was offside. It was, probably about 8 inches to a foot, and so the goal was reversed, and only about a minute and a half later, San Jose scores an even strength goal against Felix Sanson, who played pretty well, actually, in the game, and the Flyers ended up losing 3-0. It was 2-0. They had an empty net goal. So, it was kind of a strange game. Both teams, as you mentioned, played back-to-backs, and the Flyers were very listless for 2 periods. They came alive in the third period and actually outshot the Sharks 17-6 in the third period. That was the Flyers' only good period. And what made it so strange was the Flyers' 2 leading scorers were benched in the third period. I'm talking about Kevin Hayes and Travis Konechny, and they were already missing their third leading scorer, James Van Riemsdyk, who was injured the first period, blocking a shot. So you're without your 3 leading scorers, and you have these makeshift ragtag lines that were all mixed up, and yet they outplayed San Jose in the third period, and Torts delivered a message, though. He wasn't happy with Konechny's play, wasn't happy with Hayes' play, and did that surprise you, Lou, that, in a game where you're losing 2-0, where he benched his 2 leading scorers?
It did a little, but he sees things that I don't, certainly, as an NHL coach. But a little bit. I first noticed it when I saw how much Delorier was playing.
Right.
There. I mean, he went right to the end, and then you realize halfway through the period that you don't see those guys, and they set on headsets. Anyone's seen Hayes, and he's just sitting there watching it and probably stewing and figuring out what he did wrong, or maybe he knew what he did wrong, or something that the coach did not care for. But Torts is not going to mess around. These guys are going to understand where they stand with this club, and that's played out pretty well for him in the past. So I think it'll be fine with this guy.
Yeah, and I think he has his team really well conditioned. They've won most of the third period so far, and I think that is a result of a tough training camp. And the Flyers have controlled most third periods, and they've been the more aggressive team late in the game. And as I said, I think they're in better condition than most of these teams. And but what would you consider this to be a good year for the Flyers? Would it be making the playoffs? Would it be, just development of the young kid? What does Lou Nolan see as what could you call this a successful season?
Both of those things, Sam. I think it is increasingly difficult to make the playoffs. It's a tough division, and you got to certainly have a good record to do it. But I think along with saying, yes, let's make the playoffs, you couldn't do it without the development of the young guys because it's a young club. And so I think both of those are going to go hand in hand. And I think the message will certainly come across. Like, last night, there was a message, no question about it. And, these guys are going to understand that. There's nothing worse for a hockey player than just be sitting on the pine and you're not going over for the next shift. When the coach is tapping other people and you realize it's your turn. And you're sitting there, it's just like, what did I do? And then maybe you reflect on it. And I don't think you usually have a whole period to reflect on it, though, like those guys did.
Yeah, and as you said, he delivered a message. And he delivered a message not only to those guys, but to the other players on the team, not just the two he benched. And guys like Noah Cates and Wade Allison see that. And they know they have to play hard or they're going to be sitting on the pine, as you said. And the young kids and even some of the veterans really stepped up. In the third period, you mentioned Delorier, and he ended up with 4 shots in the game. That might be a career high. I'm not sure. But, good point. There was a message not only to the two bench, but to everybody else. I would switch gears a little bit. You've been back downstairs this year. You were upstairs because of COVID. The setup was a lot different for 2+ years. And can you talk a little bit about that? How difficult it was maybe to make calls from upstairs in the press level, with the rest of the writers, and as opposed to being downstairs at ice level and right by all the action.
Well, Sam, yes, I think there's a detachment. I always tell people that if I went one more row, I'd be on the catwalk. And, I had monitors. And a producer, Tina DeVillo, who was my boss. And, that all helped. But, you miss certain things. Like, for instance, you go to a break, you come back from a break, and next thing you know, play starts, they drop the puck, and there's a penalty up there, because the referees, the referee doesn't say anything because the light's on. He doesn't say his penalty or whatever. And we've had a couple of instances where, you miss an assist or something of that nature. My communication with the off-ice officials has always been good, and they are absolutely outstanding. But it's just being that far away from it is hard. But all the announcers went upstairs or somewhere in the building other than where they were stationed in the penalty box. I know Toronto, the guy in Toronto has been upstairs for a while, and a couple of other places have been off the ice. But you miss a lot. You miss a lot of detail, and we'll see how long that works like that. The team wanted me down there, and I wanted to be down there. I missed it a lot, not that I didn't get a chance to interact with you guys up there, but
you've been downstairs though all year now. This year, right?
I have, yeah.
Right.
After preseason, we did preseason upstairs, and then I moved down for game 1.
Right. Okay. We started this by talking about the Phillies. And, there's mass hysteria. The fans are really into the Phillies, and rightfully so. It's been an unbelievable run. Can you take us back to what it was like, when the Flyers are winning their cups? And, Joe Watson is famous for saying, when the Flyers were introduced in 1967, they had a welcoming parade. 25 people showed up. And he said that there were more players and club personnel in the parade that were watching the parade, and then 7 short years later, and you were a big part of it, you were in the parade, and 2.3 million people watched the Flyers. And for those that are young out there and didn't experience the Flyers winning the 2 cups, what was the atmosphere like? What was the city like when the Flyers were in their heyday in 74 and 75?
Well, first off, it was the Spectrum. And certainly, it could be placed inside of the Wells Fargo Center lengthwise. So there was a different ability to capture sound inside the building. And that crowd, when we won that first cup, May 19th, 1974, never forget the date, it built up, and things were going really well. And then when Bobby Orr got the penalty at the end, it really started. And my headset, was crackling from the noise. I mean, it was unbelievable. But that aside, the parade, we gathered that morning. They put us out to the guy came in from the city and said, well, we're going to run up to South Spruce Street, and then we'll slow down, and there'll be people there. And I said, okay. And it was a day after, so it was, a mess. And got outside and started up, and there were people right away, inside the parking lot, and immediately when the cars turned, and the crowd just built and built and built. I mean, this was before greased poles, huh? So they were hanging everywhere. People were outside windows. There was ticker tape. It was unbelievable. And, with the smaller cars, all Cadillac convertibles, I guess the dealers got together and got those. That was great. It was, the people were right there. They're right there. And the police, they could hand you drinks, which was fine. And, everybody was a part of it, and it was unbelievable. Then down to Independence Mall and Kate Smith, singing at the mall, and as far as you could see, just people, masses of people. But and it's the kind of thing that right now makes me tingle thinking about it. It's just, it's just amazing. You can't explain it.
Yeah, Bernie Braun tells the story where he had one too many cocktails, and he had to relieve himself, and he ran into a row house because he said, I need to use somebody's bathroom, and ran into a row home and used their bathroom, and then came back out and climbed into the convertible. So it was some day there.
They halted the parade for that and escorted him into that home. There's a story that they took that toilet seat off and saved it.
Yeah, I heard that.
I don't know whether that's the case or not, but
I think they put it in the shadow box, and Bernie P here, it said, or something like that. But
it was a golden time. There's no question about it.
Good one. And I'll give a shameless plug to our book here too, Lou, because all these stories are in the book we did a few years ago called If These Walls Could Talk, and Lou did an amazing job of, retelling these stories. There were hundreds of them, and we had a great time doing that. But we're going to take a short break right now, and we'll be back with some questions from fans to Lou Nolan. And thank you for listening to our Broad Street Bullcast. Thank you again for joining our Broad Street Bullcast. And we have special guest Lou Nolan, who has been with the Philadelphia Flyers, the only person who's been with the Philadelphia Flyers since their inception in 1967. And Lou has been the PA announcer since 1972. And we have a couple questions for Lou. Thanks again for joining us. And first question comes from Tim A. He says, how different is the culture within the organization since Mr. Snyder passed away? Interesting question.
Yeah, it is. And I reflected on it a few times. I think that I can best answer that by saying that the culture from the beginning in 67 was a small organization and family oriented, so to speak, because it was so small. And, you got to know really everybody that was involved in the organization. And, then you win a couple of championships and it becomes even more of a family. You roll along and things are what they are. Now, Ed, and he always wanted to be called Ed, was the consummate leader of that organization that began small and ended large. when the whole situation with the buildings and new buildings and Sixers and so forth was all merged into one operation. I mean, talking about a large company, a very, very large company. That was the major change when it switched to a large company. It's I don't want to say that it's detrimental, because I don't really think it is. I think that fans see it as a, geez, I loved it as a family, and it doesn't seem to be a family anymore. Well, it really is still a family when you get right down to it, and when you are part of it. I think decisions get made for different reasons, based on whether or not it's a small group or a large company. But generally, I think that the bottom line is put the best product you can on the ice and get the right players to come in and work hard, along with the right coaching situation. And I really believe that, we're on the way at this point to being a much better operation from the standpoint of the hockey operation, and where it's going to settle. That's the real key. I mean, a hockey operation is one as it stands, but where it finishes, I mean, I don't know where it's going to finish, but at the outset here, I think everybody would probably say it's better now this year than it has been. And I think that's just a product of draft young kids who want to work hard, and the coach who has the ability to convince them that, they can be part of all of this, the young guys. So you get veterans and young people, and you put them together. I know that the team is as young as it's been in a long time. I think you'll probably agree on that, Sam. So, as they move forward, hey, who knows?
Yeah, I think the average
difference is the size of the operation of the company.
Right. But to your point on youth, I think the average age is like 25 and a half, and the league average is like 27. So they are with the younger teams, and I agree. I think bringing John Tortorella here was a move to get this thing turned around, and I think that was probably the best move Chuck Fletcher made in the off season. And but Tim A, we appreciate that question. And by the way, we were plugging our book a while ago. I got to plug Alan Bass wrote a terrific biography on Ed Snyder, which just came out maybe a week or two ago. And we've been running excerpts on Philly hockey now of Ed Snyder's biography by Alan Bass. So get a chance, pick that up. It's called The Last Sports Mogul, and Alan did a terrific job on that. Next question comes from...
before you say that, I would say that grab that book, because I think it took me a day to read it. I just loved it, and I really enjoyed it. And Alan was able to put it together in a fine way, such as you were in These Walls Could Talk.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But, and I'll pass that along to Alan, too. I know coming from you, it means a lot. And there's just some great stories about Ed, and from his family owning a grocery store, and then all the way up. He was, a self-made guy, and you don't, as the book says, you don't see that nowadays. I mean, now you don't get rich from a sports team, right? You're already rich when you buy a sports team. That wasn't the case when Ed Snyder, purchased the Flyers, with Jerry Wallman. They were the co-founders. And just a different time, and very interesting reading. But we'll jump now to Patrick Hart. He asked, excluding or in addition to Cam York, what current players from the Lehigh Valley Phantoms do you think will be with the Flyers by the end of this season?
Well, interesting question, for sure. I think the second half of the Cates combination has a chance. It's injuries play a big part in this. I once chatted with the gentleman, the Brooks brothers, that own the franchise in Lehigh, and they said, Lou, when someone is hurt, you guys don't call and say, send us a player. You say, send us the best player. It makes it a challenge. Right. So, it's the best player that's always coming up to fill the spot. And that's the way it really ought to be. Goaltender-wise, you and I have talked about this. Perhaps Samuel Ersson heads back. We still have a goalie near the Arctic Circle, so to speak. I don't know what will play out of that.
Yeah.
Certainly not with Lehigh. I wish he was, yeah. Lazinski, who was one of the last guys that sent down, could be back. I guess that Tyson Forster is another guy.
Yeah,
Lazinski's going to come back.
Lazinski's been back and forth. He's back right now, but and I'm sure he will be back with the Phantoms too before too long because John Tortorella has said we're going to have players coming and going and going and coming and that's going to happen. Forster's an interesting one. You mentioned him, and he's only 20 years old, and he's got a big shot. I love this kid. I think he's going to be an NHL star for a while. He's going to be probably the only guy in their system that I see has, a chance to be a 30-goal scorer. They haven't had many of them that were homegrown. And I think Forster one day will be a 30-goal scorer, but he needs some seasoning. I know Chuck Fletcher says he's not going to rush him. But as you mentioned, injuries happen. You can't control injuries. So, who knows? Maybe we will see Forster here at a young age, maybe in the second half of this year. But and you mentioned Samuel Ersson. What did you think of his play in the preseason?
I liked him, Sam. I thought he did fine. But you got to play. You have to play. And when guys go back in any sport, you're called into the coach's office or the manager's office, and you're not playing. It benefits you to play somewhere if you have the talent and to move back up. I thought he did fine.
I liked his composure. He seems locked in. He says, he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and he says, when he was younger, he kind of modeled his game. Not his game as much, but his attitude after Carey Price and don't get too high, don't get too low, when things are going bad. And he just really was locked in. And he's off to a pretty good start with the Phantoms, too. We'll jump ahead to the last question from Left Coast Flyers. I think this person is from the L.A. area, and he says, does Lou have any pregame rituals like the players do?
Interesting. Well, I try to arrive to give myself enough time to do what I need to do to prepare myself. One of the things that I normally do is the day of the game, before I head out for the center, I'll pick up and look at the roster of the visiting team from the standpoint of pronunciations, because the last thing that I want to do is to embarrass myself and a player by a bad pronunciation. It's become more difficult for sure, in the last few years because of the numbers of individuals from Europe that come in. But for the most part, it's being outside. Now that I'm back downstairs, being outside the room, seeing the guys there on the way out when they come out and congregate out in the hallway before they charge out, so to speak, and doing a lot of high fives. In fact, I was wondering why my knuckles on my left hand hurt, and it's because of the fives that I get from closed hockey gloves are not soft. They're like boom. So, and I realized that that's the reason. It'll go away in a couple of days, but back to back with that would not be good. But
especially when Nick Deloria is giving you the high five.
Yeah, I just want to, get my water, get set, get ready to roll. Know who the additions are. Not embarrass myself or a player with a wrong name, and eat a pregame meal with my friends from the NHL, off ice officials, and those kinds of things. I think that's the only real real,
Ritual.
thing that I would do as a ritual. Yeah.
All right. I can't thank you enough, Lou, for taking the time out. You're a busy person, and thank you so much for joining us. And before I let you go, we started this with the Phillies. You got to give me a prediction on the Phillies Astros World Series. Who's going to win it? How many games? And we'll let you go.
I'm taking the Phils in 6.
All right. So
I know the Astros are good, but I like our pitchers, and there's going to be time. There's time. It starts Friday, right?
Yep, Friday night at I believe 8:07, and maybe in a couple of weeks we'll have another parade down Broad Street. And Lou, you know all about those parades, right, Lou?
Sure do, and that would be really something because this group is just loved by the fans. Flyers fans, Phillies fans, Eagles fans alike. Everybody loves the Phillies today. Yeah,
and I think the thing about the Phillies is they enjoy each other. They enjoy the game. You just feel, how they really love each other. And I got that feeling, I must say, from the Astros watching them beat the Yankees yesterday. They were a close, tight-knit team, and just like the Phillies. And I think that plays a big part in it. And, the Flyers are trying to build that close-knit foundation as well. And some of it comes with winning. And hopefully it won't be too many years down the road that the Flyers are in the position the Phillies are in now. But, Lou, again, thank you so much. And we will see you at the Wells Fargo Center on Thursday.
Thank you, Sam. I do appreciate it. And, the opportunity to be part of your podcast is important to me. So thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
Take care.
Thanks again for listening to our Broad Street Bullcast. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on whichever platform you use. And as the late, great Gene Hart was fond of saying, good night and good hockey.